I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Second order of business on the county board agenda is open forum. Obviously, we're still not letting the public in here, but we are accepting letters and comments to be sent to us and to be read here at the county board meeting. Mr. Houle, is there any open forum letters to be read?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, there are two. They both refer to me, and so I did not, well, in part, refer to me, and so I did not want to be subject to the accusation that I, read them in any particular way or with any inflection of voice, so I gave them to Therese, and she'll read them for you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, county board members, I have two emails that were received in our office. First one I'm going to read is from Richard Burton, and his address is not listed. It is signed Crow Wing Township resident and fireworks commissioner. And these are both a little bit on the long side, so.
Okay,
All right.
time.
Tim, we really want to know what possible good it would do to declare our county is in a state of emergency any further. Is it to wind up the already scared and spooked members of the community in an effort to control them and their mobility? Many want to know if this is coming from the sheriff's department or from your office. Either way, it seems to be absolutely senseless at this time due to the lack of bodies in mobile morgue somebody decided we needed. The funeral homes can process in excess of 5 per day each. Some simple math says that if COVID-19 gets into the care facilities, they will either empty in 2 weeks or their survivors will have built up herd immunity without needing your trailer. If you aren't going to use the trailer, many of us in the county could use it to purchase our hogs from South Dakota right now. They are at $125 dressed and quartered, so we have them for Rib Fest and all the other things we'll need to get back to doing unless the sky is falling. If the declaration is nothing but a way for members of the Sheriff's Department to control, spy, and harass people, that's not going to be good for the people who pay the bills over there. If it's just a tactic to gain access during a minor crisis to free money, what could ask what else we need besides the mobile morgue, the 20,000 masks we overpaid for, and the motel rooms we have on hold and are paying for? Please do not waste time and money cranking up the public over what is so far a non-event in our county. Should things change, like bodies rotting in the streets, many of us had the virus in November and December, go ahead and call your special meeting and do what is wise, not what is knee-jerk and based on a computer model with faulty numbers from front to back and nothing but a scheme to hide more secret deals on the items listed above. When you can show us that Tim Walz is an accomplished virologist and understands how we need herd immunity or else it's over, we will obey. Until then, we're rather confident there is a man behind the green curtain, maybe a few in the case of Crow Wing County. Richard Burton, Crow Wing Township resident and fireworks commissioner. The second email we received in our office is from Jeff Chezak, address listed at 511 D Street, Brainerd. Hi Tim. Oh, I'm gonna skip to where he starts it. Greetings, Mr. Chair and Crow Wing Board of Commissioners. I want to first thank Administrator Houle for reading my comments to you today. My focus today is regarding the county personnel and budget committees, along with one related item. As you know, the recent emergency declaration has placed in action the live streaming of the County Commissioner Committee of the Whole meeting. This means the audio/video of these meetings will be available on the county's website for the public to review indefinitely. Since many Crow Wing County citizens cannot attend these meetings, they will now have the opportunity to see what information was presented to their county elected officials that may have perhaps influenced your decisions. The live streaming of the Committee of the Whole meeting is a blessing to all of Crow Wing County and will be a fine example to other counties across the state in how to best provide transparency. However, it will be all for naught if live streaming these meetings is not maintained and continued. Now, specifically, regarding the earlier mentioned Personnel and Budget Committees, these two committees are entirely made up of elected commissioners and nobody else. So let's ask ourselves, why are these two groups identified as committees? Why aren't the agendas of these two committees not posted on the county website and only found in the newspaper? Why doesn't the county provide the agendas and supporting information for these meetings on the website right along with the 3 other regular meetings of the county board? Again, these two committees, no matter how you slice it, are indeed county board meetings. There are 3 Crow Wing County board members assigned to these two committees. And based on the structured assignment, this allows for the entire Crow Wing County board to attend any of these meetings without having violated the open meeting law. However, would it be an open meeting law violation if only one assigned member of one of these committees was present and the two other not assigned members were present for the meeting? There would indeed be a quorum of the Crow Wing County Board, but not a quorum of the assigned committee. If this were to occur, there would no longer be a meeting of the committee, but an incorrectly published meeting of the county board. So how do you think that scenario would play out? I'm only providing that scenario to hopefully give you something to think about related to the makeup of these committees and to think about what is, in reality, really going on here. At this point, I'd appreciate it if you don't go back to the old saying, the meetings are open to the public, so there's no reason to record the committee meetings. Please reflect back on my earlier comments regarding just how important it is for the public to now have access to the Committee of the Whole meeting and apply it here. In a recent email, the administrative assistant informed me that the reason why there are no agendas of these two committees on the county's website is as follows. Since we do not live stream, record, or take minutes for either the Personnel Committee or Budget Committee, they are not set up in our meeting management software. So just how difficult would it be to have these two committees set up in the meeting management software? I believe only the meeting location would need to change to indicate the live streaming process. If as a Crow Wing County board member, you are not in favor of having these two committees live streamed and therefore subsequently not in favor of providing the citizens an opportunity to review the information, presentations, and the entire discussions that you use to formulate your decisions, I can only ask 2 questions. What would be the difficulty or problem with live streaming these two committee meetings? And who or what would be hurt if these two committee meetings were live streamed? One other point of consideration, if you would allow me, is to take a look at these two committees and commissions under the county's umbrella, which are now being live streamed. The Planning Commission, Board of Adjustment, and the Crow Wing County Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Neither of these two groups have a single individual assigned that has also been elected to the county board, and yet their meetings are being live streamed, which would be available to the public indefinitely. One further note related to the Personnel Committee conducted 1 week ago, yesterday, Mr. Houle has done an excellent job responding to emails in most instances. However, when an email doesn't receive a response, it is very telling. For the second time in just over a year, I asked Mr. Houle why is it that on the Personnel Committee agenda, where it indicates closed meeting, how come the statute related to why the committee is entering into closed session isn't provided? I emailed this question in February of 2019 and didn't receive a response, and again last week, I emailed a similar question along with 1 or 2 others. Administrator Houle, for the second time, did not respond to that particular question, so I asked again for a 3rd time, and his response was, "It is announced at the meeting." This response is by any definition a stretch. And it is only a stretch because it is indeed a requirement that the state statute allowing a public body to enter into closed session be placed on the record prior to entering into closed session. However, seeing as how there is no physical record of the meeting and the published agenda doesn't provide the statute, then what is considered to be the record? If the chair of personnel has the statute printed in front of them on the agenda, wouldn't it stand to reason the statute will more likely than not be announced? And why isn't the public afforded an opportunity to see the reason why the Personnel Committee is entering into closed session when they read the agenda in the newspaper, and only the newspaper? This is indeed an easy item to correct. If you look at agendas of other local units of government, I am confident you will see the statutory reason they are entering into closed session. If you aren't prepared today to make a decision on this, I very much look forward to you directing county staff to begin initiating live streaming of the Personnel and Budget Committee meetings in the very near future. However, here's my final thought. The next Personnel Committee meeting is scheduled for 9:00 a.m. next Monday, so in this instance, time is indeed of the essence. Thank you very much for your time today and considering my comments. Jeff Chezak. That is all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, nothing else? You know, Mr. Chezak is the chairman of the Airport Commission, and, you know, he is dogged about making sure the work that we do is known to the public, and I think he makes some points. I think that it's the committee of the whole being streamed live is a good thing. I think we should think about our other committees being streamed live. Give it some thought. Maybe we can talk about it at the next county board meeting. Okay. Next is review, number 3 on the county board's agenda is review and approval of the April 14th, 2020 regular county board meeting minutes and the April 23rd emergency county board meeting minutes. We'll take those both as one item. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Franzine.
So moved by Commissioner Franzine.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Barrows. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Next, number 4 on the agenda is review and approval of today's agenda. Any additions or anything? Okay, we are going to take 5.8 off the consent agenda, and we'll take that up right after we approve the consent agenda. So 5.8 is moved off the consent agenda and is just right after it, and we'll have a discussion about that. Anybody have anything to say? Any of the county board members have anything to?
Mr. Chair.
Questions on the consent agenda? First of all, I think I need a motion to approve the agenda, correct?
Yes, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman.
Is there a motion to approve the
So
agenda
move.
with that
Yes.
moving that?
Yep.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Brecken. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Barrows. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Point of order.
We got to have our discussion.
Okay.
Okay, Mel, can you please come to the microphone?
No, we're not on the consent agenda.
Oh, okay.
Don't we?
Well, yeah.
We need a motion to approve the agenda.
Yes, and I believe we had one.
Yeah, we did.
Yes,
have
Mr.
that.
Chair, there's a motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended, removing 5.8. That still needs a vote.
Right, and
Okay, now
that's where I was at. I'm not on the consent agenda
Okay.
yet.
All right.
So, did you realize that you're just approving the agenda?
Right.
Correct. Okay, so this is the motion on the agenda for today. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Now, we're on the consent agenda.
Do we need the motion first?
No, we can talk about it first.
Okay, Mel, please. Of course, I'm on the personnel actions, and on replacement staffing, the first one is because of a departure. The second one, for a claims collection specialist, doesn't say a reason. Was that a departure, or is that
It
just
was a departure. It was for Marka Oliver, who took a position with the Teamsters.
Okay, and then on the 2 hires, were they in the budget?
Yes, these are replacement staffing as well, critical backfill positions in our jail operation.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the consent agenda? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Barrows,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Franzine. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion passes. Now we'll go on to 5.8, which is SWCD Letter of Appreciation. I was going to ask, and then I did talk to Commissioner Brecken and did get a little bit of an explanation, but Commissioner Brecken, if you want to explain what this is, I mean, you know that I just don't like a whole lot of, I don't know, I guess it's a nice letter, but I just don't want us to, if we're going to be doing a lot of these, I think they just become meaningless. But anyway, can you just explain what this letter is all about?
Sure. Well, this is just a letter, it's really a letter of appreciation, and I do see Melissa's here from Soil and Water, and thank you for coming, Melissa. But I think that this is a letter of recognition that shows cooperation with the Crow Wing Soil and Water and the Highway Department that we're working with, and I'll ask Tim to touch base on this just a little also. But it was a coordination with that, the Lake Association, because the Big Pine Dam was constantly being washed out, and I believe that the county spent over $50,000 just maintaining and doing some of that work. But working with Crow Wing Soil and Water, they were able to get a project going and bring in another $1.2 million to help with this project. And if we could pull that up, I think that would be helpful. So it's really showing the strong partnership that we have with Crow Wing Soil and Water, the benefits they bring to this. There were some photographs that I think we can,
Okay, what do you want?
5.8 in the pictures
Okay.
of the dam.
Actually, I'm going to go back.
And so I just want to, I think that it's really good that when we can have that kind of recognition and the partnerships that we have with some of that and the work that goes into it. With that, maybe Tim could add a little bit to it, but I think when you see the work that's been done in this, and again, a lot of different parties that were involved in getting it together.
Absolutely. Can you hear me? Okay.
County engineer, yes.
First thing I want to say is this is a big deal. This is a big deal. This has been going, we've been working on this project, a permanent solution since 2013. And I think 3 of the commissioners that are seated in here today may recall some of the discussions we had about the Rock Dam back then. I actually reviewed the tapes back from 2013 to 2014 about this. And what sticks out in my mind is at that time is that we had spent, along with the Lake Association, around $30,000 to do a Band-Aid repair on this dam that used to go to the very top. It used to look like that. And that design continuously washed away. And so it was looking for a permanent solution to something that would last and not we would go year after year after year after heavy rains to replace this. And it was by the direction of the county board to go seek a permanent solution. You had authorized me, or the board authorized me $17,000 to hire an engineering firm to identify a range of permanent solutions. And that prepared us for the grant applications that the Soil and Water went after starting in 2018 and finally achieved. And so I wanted to highlight that this is a 7+ year partnership that we've had with Soil and Water, and this permanent solution, which was identified in the original study completed in 2014, is what you will see out there today. It is now complete. I think it's 5 riffles. 5 rock riffles is what it's referred to, and it acts the same as one single rock structure that holds back water. The important part was that it allows fish to move and migrate up and down the Pine River. The old structure that you saw there was a barrier, and that's really where we needed to partner with Soil Water and get their guidance on that, and actually they took the lead. We were more focused on the barrier to keep the water in the lake and something that was not need to be maintained every year. They introduced their expertise to get that ecology improvement as well. It's now complete. That $17,000 that the county board authorized me to spend on the study with the partnership of Soil and Water turned into a grant of $1.2 million. That is an excellent investment. That's an excellent partnership, and I wanted to highlight that today. And I think there's some other opportunities that they're going to be in charge of. Melissa and Bill are back there. There might be a ribbon cutting, some other things, but I didn't want to wait to ask the county or county board to express appreciation about that partnership. And so there's a couple photos there. I don't know if Bill or Melissa would like to come up and talk about it or not, or you have questions for them. And the partnership is just focusing on this picture. It's the city of Cross Lake. There's a contractor in there, and I see a DNR hydrologist. There's some fisheries folks in there, and probably many others that I'm missing. It was not just the county and Soil and Water, but many other partners as well. It's now complete. It's really something to see, and I encourage you to go look at it when it's open to the.
Mr.
Bray.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner.
Melissa, do you have anything to share with this?
Mr. Chair and members, we just wanted to say I agree that it's a great partnership opportunity. And if you go out there today, one of the things, one of the Lake Association board members, Ken, I can't remember his last name, but he went to the Rock Dam for the first time, and he was so taken back by the beauty of this new structure. It's changed the entire feel of that area. And so I really do think that this is going to provide that barrier that we needed, as well as provide that fish habitat. And we're just really grateful for the opportunity to work with you guys. This was a long process, lots of hoops to work with. And this was a great partnership because, in essence, we were able to work with the others, especially the permitting authority. Just to get the permit to do this was probably almost a year in process. So it's not like these things happen right away. That's why it took so long to be able to do a lot of these things. But we're grateful we were able to get the funding from Lessard Sam's Outdoor Heritage Council, and just the opportunity to work with you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then Bill Westerberg was the engineer back there. And then one of the other residents on the lake, who's also an engineer, sent us a letter of appreciation. And he went and did his own calculations, and he felt like the calculations of where the weirs were spot on to what he expected for the lake level.
Thank you. Any further comments on this? Motion to approve the letter of appreciation to the Soil and Water Conservation District.
I'd so move.
So moved by Commissioner Brecken.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Franzine. All in favor of the approval of this appreciation letter signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. You can pass that down. Number 6 on the agenda is a COVID department updates. Administrative Services, Deborah Erickson. Hello, Deb.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. I am here this morning just to give you a little bit of an update on what we have been doing in Administrative Services with regards to COVID-19 preparation, response, and preparing our offices for our eventual reopening to the public as well. As you know, most of our activities in Administrative Services are going to be in support of our organizational partners within our organization, as we are here to support the departments and staff within Crow Wing County. But I'll give you a little bit of an update on what each of our divisions has been working on. In our facilities department, we have been working to provide public service counters, interview rooms, and public computer areas, ways of being modified with a combination of permanent and temporary barriers. You'll probably start to see sneeze guards or glass partitions in some of our office spaces and at our public service counters to protect both our staff as well as our customers when they are in front of us. Our facilities coordinator has been working with our cleaning contractors who completed a COVID audit, ways or recommendations of what things we could be looking at. Some of those recommendations that came up was use of disposable dishes in break rooms rather than, we've always said bring your own dishes and wash your dishes. We're suggesting that we consider using disposable dishes and utensils for a period of time, using single-serve coffee makers, using temporarily suspending community food items, shared salad dressings, or the butter dish in the break room, that type of thing. They've also recommended that we rearrange furniture and workstations to provide more distance or spaces in between. Additionally, we've also looked at how do we switch out some of our fabric furniture, our fabric chairs, and switch to a vinyl type of chair that can be more easily cleaned and sanitized in some of those public waiting space areas. We're looking to, with regard to some of our areas in community services in particularly that have children's books or activity centers in the public waiting areas, temporarily suspending the use of those, and some of them that are in the interview rooms, how can we sanitize those in between each use as well? We're also considering temporarily disabling public touch points like vending machines, water fountains, phones in public spaces, or public touch screens like we see on the first floor of the historic courthouse here, temporarily disabling those to reduce the number of touch points that are there. Our facilities department is also working directly with managers in all the buildings and departments to make adjustments to physical spaces to accommodate distancing for staff as necessary as we start to bring, if we need to bring more staff back on site, how do we ensure that we have physical distancing in those areas? We're also operating our HVAC equipment to bring in more fresh air and to extend the runtime. They're on a timer right now where typically 5 o'clock, you'll hear zoom, everything kind of shuts off at 5 o'clock in our buildings. We're looking at how do we extend that runtime to keep that air circulating, that fresh air coming in more often. Our facilities coordinator and manager are working remotely, intermittently over the course of this time, and all of our technicians have been, for the most part, working here on site as they are needed on site to support those necessary opportunities here. Some of the things that we've taken and done in our IT department, one of the first things we did was install the Microsoft Teams software for collaboration across the county. This has been really a huge success for us. We found departments have been able to utilize this very, very well and extensively. User adaptation was extremely fast in this particular instance. This was an instance of a software rollout that went very well, and we were very pleased with that. We did add some additional licensing for Teams to include some audio capabilities with some live streaming if we need to get to that perspective with that software. But we've also added 2 conference call bridge numbers through CTC to allow us to utilize additional audio capabilities for public meetings or for staff meetings that need a conference call in also. We also added additional licenses for our employee remote access. Before COVID-19, we had capacity for about 25 people to work off-site through our VPN license and still be able to access their necessary files and networks. Within about a week, we were able to quadruple that. We now have the capacity to handle about 200 licenses working off-site at a time. Plus, we increased or doubled our public safety licenses from 25 to 50, so we can accommodate the county attorney's office and the sheriff's office as well. So getting that license capability and capacity was a critical thing to keep our employees working remotely as highly functioning as possible. We also worked with CTC to add additional capacity for incoming and outgoing phone connections. So as calls are coming in and need to be transferred, if we're calling in on a phone that needs to go down through the VPN to a remote location, it takes additional licensing for that to occur as well. So we were able to accomplish that within a very short period of time also. We added some additional licensing for our IT remote support, TeamViewer software, which allows our IT staff to remotely assist in issues of software or hardware problems, so that they were able to remote into employee desktops to assist in some of those areas. We deployed every available spare laptop and piece of accessory equipment that we had in our IT stock. We have deployed that across the organization. And we installed a lot of soft phones, which is an IP-based telephony, which allows your phone to work through your computer. So employees who were working remotely could still answer their county phone through their computer at home, so that those phone calls were still being able to be handled. Staffing-wise in our IT department, we have been kind of ramping up where the majority of our team is working remotely at this point. We do have 2 help desk staff and one network staff on site pretty much every day, and others who are brought on site for project work as needed as well. We were also able to utilize virtual interviews to hire 2 positions that were in the process of being hired at the time that this whole thing kind of took wings. So we were able to backfill the help desk vacancy that was there and is a critical need. And then we were also able to hire our CRM developer through a virtual interview process as well. In finance, we've been doing a lot of number work. We've been setting up timesheets, general ledger accounts, and methods for tracking related COVID response time and the costs that are associated with that. This is both so we know as a county what those costs are, and also if there is reimbursement through FEMA or any other opportunity, this is allowing us to track that time and track those costs as well. We're working to anticipate additional costs and potential loss in revenues and beginning to work on how to determine how we navigate those cash flow challenges that we have and subsequent potential fund balance usage in the future. We're analyzing employment costs and potential areas for savings, seeking additional funding sources to continue operations, and building new cash flow models and forecasts for the organization as well. Staff has also spent time contributing to legislative conversations around property tax funding needs, elections, and other areas and items to attempt to inform the state on challenges that the counties will face as a result of the stay-at-home orders. And our finance staff has been working remotely as much as possible. However, we have at least 1 or 2 people in office every day here as well. And then on our election side, as I mentioned at Committee of the Whole last week, we're planning to conduct our election judge training exclusively online this year. We are preparing for a significant increase in mail ballots and absentee voting. We are planning on how to social distance our facilities here for voting when that time starts. We're working on how we can accommodate filings remotely, working with the legislature for some needed legislation change on that. Filings for federal, state, and county offices open, I believe it's May 19th, the middle of May, sometime in there. And so we're looking to see how do we accommodate that filing perspective as well. We're also looking at identifying what changes or things need to happen at polling places to make sure that they are able to accommodate social distancing in those polling places. We're developing protocols for sanitizing voting booths and supplies. As I mentioned before, are we considering disposable pens or bring your own pen kind of initiative? How are we going to make sure that we're protecting both our election judges and our voters? And we are also working on securing sanitizing products and protective equipment for the polling places. Right now, we do not have a stockpile of supply that we would be able to use for that purpose. So what does our supply chain look like for that? And then also, it's important that we work on how to provide information to our county residents on whatever changes might be coming up due to elections within their particular areas. So we are working on some communication plans with that as well. I would be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for the Administrative Services Director?
Mr. Chair, if I can?
Commissioner?
Debbie, how will, I mean, obviously we've been a lot of time and investment into some of these efforts that we're making. How will this benefit the county in the future, do you think?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Brecken, some of the things will be things that we'll probably see for a while. The sneeze guards, the protection that way, the vinyl furniture instead of the fabric furniture. It might change how we do choose to outfit our spaces and outfit our offices in the future. I think we can say that it will be a new normal for a while. I think that it will provide provide us the opportunity to pivot quickly if we do have other issues, public health and public safety issues like this that occur. The technology pieces that we have put in place definitely make us more nimble and more effective across our organization, whether we're working in our respective offices or whether we're working remotely. We have the tools to make sure that we can continue to support the daily operations of the organization regardless of what outcomes we have. So it has kind of ramped us up for today, but also positioned us well for the future.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I've got a silly question, as always. So you talk about the bring your own pen or having a pen. Would it be, I guess I don't know the right word, would it be unethical, or would it, what if we went to somebody that wants to advertise and provide, let's say like the Crosby Bar or something like that, and they want to advertise, and then each person gets a pen, and then you tell them, take it with you.
Mr. Chair.
That was meant to be funny, Commissioner Hoag. You can laugh.
I am inside.
Yeah, I know.
Mr. Chair, there can't be any type of advertising within the polling
Okay.
place, so we would need to secure pens that have no branding or
No
anything
branding,
like that,
okay.
even if somebody wanted to donate those. That's one of the things we're working with the legislature on. There was some dollars associated with the CARES Act that is specifically for election relief, and Minnesota was awarded $4 million of that amount, but the legislature has to appropriate that to the Secretary of State's office for that to be trickled down to the local levels as well. Part of what those dollars would be for is to provide those types of supplies, those
Okay.
disposable pens, that PPE that's necessary for the judges and the voters. But we need the legislature to take action and make that happen.
Okay.
So I'll cancel that order for pens.
Can't we cancel that order? I thought it was a great idea myself. All
Thank
right,
you.
Deb, thanks, as always,
They're a
good
big
job.
pen, too, but
Huh?
that's right.
Yeah. The county engineer, Timothy Bray.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and board members. Here is our update from the Highway Department. First, I'll start with the kind of the current operations, then I'll go into what we're doing in preparation for a reopening whenever that happens, or reopening to the public. Currently, the Highway Department is in the field a lot with 3 major, or actually 4 reconstruction projects. If you've traveled up north to County Road 13, County Road 36, or at the intersection at Sportland Corners at 13 and 77, you'll notice that there's a lot of construction activity up there. That is consuming all of our engineering folks right now, and will for the vast majority of the summer. On the maintenance front, we're actively crack sealing with in-house forces and also crack sealing with contracted forces. So certainly busy with that and other springtime maintenance. In the mechanic shop, it's kind of business as usual. The vehicles never stop coming from the sheriff's department, and repairs and inspections and things that they have to do. And the administrative staff is about 90% working remotely, and I just want to ditto what Debbie said. The IT staff has done a fantastic job of getting us up and running to be able to do that and be able to continue to answer and redirect phone calls from the public, doing our accounting processes, and permitting, processing permits, and then continuing on with other work such as budgeting and process improvements and things like that the admin staff focuses in on. I don't want to say it's business as usual, but we have not seen a decrease in our capability to deliver the services that we are expected to deliver by the public. It's just a little different, but we're going to deliver all the construction projects and all the maintenance that we said we were going to this year. As we prepare to reopen, the Highway Department is actually probably one of the easier ones because we don't see a lot of the public. We serve the public by fixing the roads, primarily, and they don't have to come into our office to let us know how we're doing on that. We have very few people that come in under the normal circumstances to come into our counter and interact with our staff. We actually see more deliveries for the shop and auto parts and stuff like that than we do the residents. And that really is because we have done a good job of doing online permitting for the things that you need to come see us about. Occasionally people will drop in and want to talk about engineering and things like that, but that might be 10 folks a week under normal circumstances. So our department is probably the easiest. We only have one entrance and one exit for the public. It's right at our front door. And we have facilities has already installed a sneeze guard for when our staff come back and the public comes in. We'll have some signage directing them to wait their turn if there just happens to be a couple folks there waiting to get some service. And we're at the highway department. You can see I'm wearing a mask, the direction that the highway department is going, and I think many of the other departments are going, is to wear a mask if you're out of your office or you have a potential to interact with the public. And so we're going to be masked when we're back to reopen. We're going to ask clients to mask and provide them a disposable one, if that's still the direction. And for long term, we may limit the way people access our department. There is the front door, but if you recall, there's a front door and then there's a vestibule and then another door to access. For years, we've wanted to just increase security in that area, and we might be looking for a way to buzz people in past the second door, or another way to badge in. That is probably longer term, as the focus really is on the other departments who see dozens and maybe even 100 customers per day. And we're certainly want those taken care of first. And that's really about it. Like I said, we just don't see a lot of the public. We serve them in different ways without actually seeing them. And that's my report, if you have any questions.
Okay, so Tim Bray, this is kind of more of a COVID update, but I'm going to ask you some other questions. So it seems to me like I'm talking about road conditions and conditions in general. It seems like a mild spring. I mean, I can remember in years past, there's been tremendous flooding and washing out roads. There hasn't been any of that I have heard of. And it seems like the frost is going out because the roads that were just like were almost brand new, that were just like this, they seem like they were already starting to straighten out. And then you're still planning on May 15th for the road restrictions to be removed. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. Load restrictions actually are set, the dates are set by the state, and they start in the south and they start to move north as the frost comes out of the ground. Currently, we're about 2 weeks out. We predict you can call down there, but they'll say, we don't know when they're going to be. It's based on the conditions. So we're about 2 weeks away from load restrictions being lifted. The frost, let's see, the last time we snowplowed, the last significant event was about early February. But before that, it was a lot of heavy snow. And actually, the heavy snow helped insulate so there wasn't deep frost this year, except in the very exposed areas. That's helped us out in construction. They're able to go. They're already digging in many areas where, in years past, we might have to wait another month or 3 weeks. So the frost is coming out. I would expect 2 weeks for the load restrictions.
So road restrictions, so the county board or the county engineer, we don't have any say on our county roads as far as when that is lifted?
We sign all of them. We have decided to follow state guidelines and manage exceptions, because we still do get exceptions, requests for folks that have an emergency or things like that.
But it's been a relatively quiet spring as far as you're concerned,
Yes.
as far as any damage to the roads or any flooding or anything?
Now, there was the last heavy rain, we had some washouts that we had to take care of and things like that. And there was the water going through the culverts was elevated, and now it's kind of back down. So stopping the major snow events in February allowed it to kind of the slow trickle rather than all at once.
Sure.
So we're doing quite well.
Any questions for the county engineer?
Thank your team.
Thank you, Tim.
I will. Thank you very much.
Community Services Director, Kara Terry.
Isn't Gary next?
Oh, Gary, okay, Land Services Director, Gary Griffin.
I'll just stand up here if that's okay.
That's perfect.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. We are also asking staff that if you're moving around the building, you're outside of your cubicle, that you do mask up. If you happen to be at somebody's property, to mask up and to stay the 6 feet recommended distance away from our customers. You can think of, land services into 3 buckets: assessing services, customer services, environmental services. So I'll just kind of go through each one of the 3. Starting with assessing services, end of March, early April, we sent out, 74,000 tax statements and the 74,000 property valuation notices and classification notices. So we're in the thick of appeals season. And we currently have 48 different districts in this county that are either township or city, with a few unincorporated areas. Out of those 48, 18 of them still hold their own local board of appeal. 5 of those townships mainly have held a virtual meeting. The rest of them we still did on site, as we did with being masked up, and we spread out the best we can in the town halls or the city chambers in a couple of cities. What will be interesting is we have the rest of the county to go through open book appeal season yet. That'll be mainly through May. And depending if we're open or not, we would still want to encourage people to contact us via email or phone to discuss any questions you have with valuation of your taxes. So we're still going to try to champion that. Even if eventually we open up to the public, we still would prefer that we can get a lot of that conversation or explanation done through, not needing to see you in person. But we also, through the appeals season, we implemented for the first time no physical reviews at a property. We asked property owners to send us in photos or videos of their property to specifically highlight any concerns that they had that we may need to be aware of with their property. That actually went, I think, pretty well, and was really well received with our customers. We also are, you guys authorized the penalty waiver of penalty for late payment for certain situations with property tax. We currently have 58 applications. They're all been processed, and now there is, I think now as this morning, 8 or 9 that would like to come and talk to you, because we had denied them based off of the criteria that was set when you enacted that process. Switching over to one more big thing I want to say as we get going is this is going to be very interesting for our department. We're looking at a desktop review for our quintile process. Slated for the 2021 assessment, we need to see roughly just over 10,000 houses. If we can get a process set up where we can use our technology with aerial photos, those oblique photos with our pictometry, our orthos, our GIS layers, if we can cut the 10,000 physical reviews even down to 5,000, one, that'll make us even more efficient, which will be a good thing if we can be effective, and two, it'll limit the amount of contact we potentially will have with our customers. So we're looking at a new criteria of what would trigger us to go out to a home if we see evidence of, some different changes that we don't have on the assessment record. So we are looking into that, trying to get some approval from the Department of Revenue on that currently. Okay, switching over to customer services, we started immediately, we quarantined the mail. We've had a 3-day quarantine. We're moving that to a 2-day quarantine. And the more that, I guess, I read and understand, whether it's from scientists and experts in the news or our emergency manager, John Bowen, you know, we probably can eventually go to a 1-day quarantine and still be pretty safe handling mail with glove and mask, PPE on when we do that. If you haven't noticed, facilities did a great job. I think it was Gullet Glass that came in and installed the glass partitions on the big counter. I think that's going to work very well. The design, I think, is still going to be so it doesn't really impact our customer flow, even though our preparation for when we do open up is that we're only going to use 4 terminals. Basically, think of the 2 on the ends and kind of 2 in the middle so that we can keep our customers spaced appropriately and our staff while they're on the other side of the counter. We think that we'll still be able to process, but there's going to be a little bit more of a line than what we've been able to pull off the last 2 or 3 years, where, you know, we really can, when we have 9 stations going, we can really get through a lot of people in one day without very, very minimal wait. But things are a little bit different, we all know. We also started rotation from home. We never had done that with our customer service staff. We have phones and counter that you're responsible for. Well, when we closed to the public, that gave us an opportunity to go, well, we won't physically have them here, but are we able to have projects and things that staff can accomplish while at home, but still having a presence in the office to pick up the phone, if you will, and keep on top of that stuff. And so that's been well received with staff as well. We're recording documents. We're doing a lot of, if you will, delayed indexing. That's usually some of the lowest priority stuff that we do in the midst of this, which is going to pay off for our office in the future to get some of that work done. And we did switch to, you know, pretty much all the vitals. So your birth certificates, your marriage applications, your death certificates, everything is via mail. And for the most part, I believe that's worked pretty good. We're a couple days slower on the turnaround, mainly because of the quarantine of the mail, but we're gonna again reduce the quarantine time, so that should speed up a little bit. For our customer service area, when we do open up, just as a touch point, we are looking at having like a greeter inside of our atrium area. One, to help folks, we're going to route them around kind of like in a big roundabout, so they don't really cross paths with another customer. And then, you know, somebody's going to be out there with wipes and spray that are just going to constantly disinfect until, you know, we hear that we don't need to potentially do that as much. So just as what we're planning there. Environmental services, we are, everybody there can work from home as well. New to that staff is a lot of them are going right into the field from their house. So that we're seeing a little bit of efficiency there with some of that. We're also doing more flexible work days. You know, I've always been one that have said our customers come and see us. They know we're open 8 to 5. We have extended our work hours for our staff. Some are working 6 to sometimes maybe 7 in the evening, not being out at the property, but processing permits and stuff like that back in the office. Out at the landfill, before the landfill, excuse me, I'll end with that one. The biggest thing for environmental services is the virtual meetings for the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment. Don't know if any of you see, we post them on the website. We yet have not live streamed them, but we're looking at that. Hopefully today we have our next Board of Adjustment meeting on Thursday. So we've recorded it last Thursday. We had 2 for March because we delayed the one in April, excuse me. We delayed the one in March. And we're hoping that our public is getting everything they need so that they're well informed and they feel like they had a say. We're requesting that they send any comments in prior to the meeting, similar to what you guys do here at the county board. And so that seems to be going pretty well. That first meeting on Thursday, we learned a few things on the fly, but it seems like with our chairman of that committee, or board, and a few others, they, at the end, thought it went about as good as you can, that first kind of go around. So we've also switched with our DIRT meetings and our TEP meetings. Everything is virtual. We almost think it's better to do it because people can attend a lot easier than physically coming in. So we think maybe, just maybe, that might be a new norm for our department with some of our meetings. AIS, we had to send a letter. We copied you guys even last night, but currently we are getting into, I'm not gonna say panic mode, but we're getting where we're out of time to get our inspectors trained and ready to get out on the landings in time for opener. I believe we're going to miss the first week now. And what we've proposed to the Department of Revenue is that we're going to go ahead and take the lead and train our own inspectors. They've been ones that says, you have to let us train them, and which is fine. They're the state and we need to listen. But we just haven't gotten any feedback. We don't know if they're working on some virtual training that they just are maybe close to. It would be great if they give us a call on Friday and say, here you go, we got it ready. You should have just been more patient. We'll take it if they would do that.
Department of Revenue or the DNR?
The Department of Natural Resources, yep. Oh, did I say DOR? My bad.
Department of Revenue. Well, you're dealing with the Department of Revenue a lot.
And
so
the DNR and
the DNR.
And PCR, yep.
Yeah.
I mean, Bowser, but yes, the DNR is the ones that take the lead for the AIS program.
No response to that letter yet? I know you just sent
Well, no, not yet. We're hoping that there will be soon, but we're gonna move ahead with that and see how it goes. Hopefully that puts us in a superior position to get our inspectors out. I mean, we have the best recruiting class, if you will, since we did it. This is even better than what I think when we had PenMac, our temp agency, hiring for us. We have 65 on the books ready to go to work for us. It'll be sad if we can't get these folks to work and they start, if you will, dropping off or maybe finding other work potentially. We'd really like to get people out there and protecting our natural resources, our bodies of water. And then last, but for surely not least, is our landfill. We have seen a huge influx of self-haulers. A lot of people staying home, cleaning up whatever they maybe have been putting off for a while. And if you haven't, just maybe drive by there. I've been out there a handful of times for different reasons, and there's always 4, 5, 6 cars, and Marvin and his crew out there do a great job getting him through. We just got a nice compliment from somebody that pulled in there. There's 7 or 8 cars in front of them. They're like, oh, geez, I'm going to be here for 45 minutes before I can get rid of my stuff. And within probably 10 minutes, they were through, and they were like, wow, it's pretty efficient. So kudos to the staff out there. The big change out there is we've asked people to just stay in your vehicle so we can distance with you and take the money that way, not going into the office anymore. We've offered sneeze guards, though, even inside the office, because there are some folks that just never read a sign. And if you're servicing some cars here, if they're 4 or 5 back, they may get out, you don't see them, and they get into the office on you once in a while. So it's not perfect, but it's working pretty good. But that's all I had for you today. Any questions?
Very good. Any questions of the Land Services Director? Nope. Okay, thank you, Gary. Now, the Community Services Director, Kara Terry.
Come up front because I need room to spread out. Good morning. I have a number of updates for you because we have a number of areas in community services. A couple of the themes that you'll hear throughout these updates is the fact that we've received waivers from DHS MDH and the DOC in terms of how we do our work, which has been very important, as well as our staff who have been just stepping up and tackling
Kara,
this.
before
Oh,
you
I'm
move
sorry.
on, for the public that watches, a waiver is an exception to the rule.
Exactly right. So giving us a different way to be able to do the work during COVID. And I should say DHS is Department of Human Services, MDH, Minnesota Department of Health, and DOC, Department of Corrections. So I'll start with our adult services area. Within all of our areas in community services, we're operating at minimum staffing levels in the office. Adult services continues to meet the service needs of individuals, though, whether that be through interactive video or telephone. Sometimes we do need to meet face-to-face, so we are still doing that where necessary as well. Our adult side of the world has really stepped up to assist public health in planning and preparedness efforts, specifically around the shelter plan, around isolation and quarantine, as well as mass fatalities. In addition to that, our behavioral health folks are serving on a number of subgroups to make sure we have safe plans in place for our long-term care facilities, our grocery stores, area businesses. Gina Heyer, who's a supervisor in our adults area, has been temporarily transitioned into public health. She has extensive history of working in public health in Illinois before she came to Crow Wing County, so we thought she'd be a good add to that team. We also have our protective placements for our homeless population and for our isolation and quarantine. So in an effort to protect the homeless population, they are a vulnerable population in relation to COVID. We are partnering with local hotel to provide sheltering for that population. Currently, we have 27 people in protective care. That's 19 individuals and 3 families. We have received a $150,000 grant from DHS to be able to provide those services. These funds also assist in establishing our isolation and quarantine locations, which we are mandated to provide. An example of that would be an individual is potentially tested positive. They either don't have a home in which to go to, or if they do indeed have a home to go to, they don't want to maybe expose their spouse or children, so they will isolate and quarantine in a hotel space that we have. And or a first responder who believes they may have come in contact and are waiting for a test to be returned to them to see if they're positive or not, may need a location to stay there as well, and so we are providing that too. Our disabilities teams around MnChoices and foster care, we are having our staff connect via interactive video or telephone. Disability Services continues to provide service and have seen an increase in 43 cases since January. All of the MnChoices reassessments that are completed typically face-to-face are now done via phone or interactive video. We work very closely with our adult foster care population. Each foster care provider has a COVID plan in place, and we have weekly emails that go out to our adult foster care providers, updating them on the most recent information related to COVID and the expectations from DHS. Adult mental health, substance use, and adult protection. Again, they were provided a waiver to be able to meet with folks virtually if possible. We utilize telehealth and or phones to meet with clients, and then we are working with our chemical dependency folks in the community to get them hooked up with technology so they're able to conduct their meetings as well. In our adult protection world, we try and do virtual meetings, but sometimes you have to do the face-to-face to get a feel for what's actually going on with the case. Comprehensive reentry. That was where our social workers were going into the jail and working with folks coming into the jail to do mental health assessments, chemical use assessments, and while they can't do that face-to-face, they continue to do those virtually with jail staff. The jail has been an amazing partner in figuring out the technology and having us work with folks because they will eventually be released. And our intake is continually busy as well, talking to individuals about their plans related to COVID, mental health issues, and substance use issues. Our long-term care teams are still doing their work virtually, as well as meeting with the clients that they need to meet with face-to-face and via telephone. We are able to do the virtual meetings because DHS has given us a waiver to provide that service virtually. Normally, we have to make face-to-face contact with individuals, and right now we can't, we're not able to do that. Community corrections is another area. There's been a lot of changes to the way that agents can do their work with their clients. Challenges and barriers that agents are facing every day include the decreased jail population, and so probation agents are having to find new and creative ways of dealing with folks who may be having some issues, and really relying on their relationships with clients to de-escalate behaviors, utilize motivational interviewing, that type of thing to talk through situations. Home visits are still occurring face-to-face in the yard, for example, on the high-risk clients and some medium-risk clients. Agents call ahead prior to the visit and do the screening, the health screening. They wear PPE and then follow the 6-foot social distancing rule. If there's a concern regarding public safety, though, and agents do have to enter the house, they will do so. For example, if we have a sex offender who was ordered to have no contact with kids and we see a kid's bike in the yard, we will be going in and doing additional follow-up around that concern. Our agents are also using virtual visits like FaceTime and the Teams meeting, or email, texts, phone calls to maintain contact with low risk and some lower medium risk clients. So that still is happening, as well as drug testing for those higher risk clients as well. Many of our agents are doing drug tests out in the field with a swab too, if they are out on a home visit and believe that there might be some substance use. They do an oral swab in the field to test for substances if there's an immediate danger that way. Boy, I could go on corrections, but I'll stand for questions at the end if you have, because everybody provided me at least 2 pages of updates for you today, so I'm trying to whittle them down to not overwhelm you. Family services, children and family services, we have our public health team. I noted much of the updates from the adults area that we're working on. Michelle Moritz has been very busy with emergency preparedness, and we're looking at different ways to support her, as well as the public health nurses. Family home visiting, there was an interruption in service because of COVID-19, but we're checking on families via phone, as well as virtually. Some in-person visits were made for those infants in need of weight checks, just to make sure that they're growing well. WIC, at the end of January, we were able to start offering alternative education to participants online, and we also conduct online visits. Currently, online visits and over the phone are the ways that we're providing information. We are postponing height, weight, and hemoglobin checks because there is a program waiver for the WIC program as well. The agency continues to be required to provide services to families related to child protection. However, again, there are waivers in place to be able to do much of that, but we do get into the homes when we have significant concerns, just to get eyes and ears on those kiddos and see what's going on. And child welfare, we continue to, with the expansion of the family preservation services, continue to follow up with families, although just do it in a little bit different of a way. Our operations team around our income maintenance units, we have seen an increase of about 440 MA person cases. So may not be cases, but the number of persons within or associated with a case, we have to take action on all of the people involved. So we saw a significant increase in that regard. We're waiting for our April numbers to see just how big of an impact our financial area has taken. Without those numbers, we didn't put this stay-at-home order in place until mid-March, so we don't have a lot of good data with March and not the end of April, so we're waiting on that. We've seen a significant increase in phone calls to the office. From February to March, about 160 more calls in social services and 103 more calls in IMU, but we are utilizing the phone a great deal as well as virtual visits with our IMU folks, and we can do that because of a waiver. Child support, Crow Wing County has about 1,782 cases that are certified for federal intercept, which means we'll take the money that is owed for the children, with arrears totaling about 19 million. This has resulted in a lot of concerns from both the payers of the monies for their child support and the receivers, and wondering how that money, if people are laid off, how they're going to be able to pay for their child support. So we're working through some of those areas. And with all of these areas, we've seen a decrease in the court appearances, so we're not able to get into court to make changes to orders or do different things that Cara Griffin had mentioned to you guys around our adoptions, that those cases have been delayed, and we see that in child support as well. In terms of reopening, we are doing significant planning around reopening because we can see up to 300 people in a day. So that's a lot of folks coming in and out of our doors. We are initially going to start with a soft reopening, so encouraging people to still participate via the internet and phone calls. That seems to be working pretty darn well for us, and with the waivers in place, we're able to continue to do that work. But we're also talking about what additional supplies we're going to need on hand. We are following the masking up protocol that Gary and Tim had both mentioned, as well as Debbie. We're talking about a route plan for our customers who come in, how we're going to maneuver them through the building and then come out. We're hoping to keep everyone on the first floor, utilize social distancing at the windows. We have the sneeze guards and all of that stuff in place. So we are looking at that. We're also talking about supervised visits, because we do have parents who have every right to come in and see their kids when they are pulled from the home. So how do we accommodate that? Cara had mentioned to you that that's currently occurring in the parks and outside, going for walks and things, and certainly we'll want to continue that, but kind of as a last resort, bringing everybody into the building. And then, much like Gary talked about, we will also have a greeter to screen clients before coming into the building with the health questions. How you feeling? Are you running into temp? Provide them a disposable mask so they're able to put that on when they come in, and then help guide them around the stanchions and the way that they'll be navigating around our building. Any questions?
Any questions of the Community Services Director? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Human Resources, Melanie Fontaine-Laska.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. From an HR perspective, we're the department that provides all types of support for our associates. But I just wanted to give you a current population update. We have 498 employees here on staff. But some of the key things that we worked on during this period of the COVID being impacted here in our community was just disseminating all of the data from the various sources, whether it was our public health team, Minnesota Department of Health, the CDC, emergency response team, and really consolidating that information into very coherent, informative, frequently asked questions for our staff. And that has been one of the most helpful tools for us to ensure that our teams knew what to do. Our leaders were supported in supporting their teams. Under the Federal Family Medical Leave Act, the federal government launched an expansion of that leave, which also impacted us here at the county. Those two expansions of the leave was a paid sick leave of 80 hours that somebody could be eligible for, as well as the expanded Family Medical Leave Act, which has two sub-provisions underneath that. One to care for a child whose school or daycare was closed, and then the other was to care for a self or a family member. And that leave expands underneath the Federal Family Medical Leave Act. a lot to navigate for our associates. FMLA in and of itself is hard to navigate, and those with the frequently asked questions that we put together, we're on our 4th version now, and keeping that information clear and consistent for our teams has been really instrumental to help through some of the unique situations. Currently, our COVID-related situations here at the county, we have 3 associates that are utilizing the 2/3 portion of the family medical leave or the child care leave to care for their children. We've had 1 associate that has utilized the emergency sick pay up to 80 hours for an illness. And we've also had 3 COVID-related cases where a family member needed to be quarantined because they could have gotten potential exposure to COVID. And they utilized the emergency sick pay. So we've utilized anywhere from 8 hours an associate has to all the way up to 44 hours, and 1 person using the total 80 hours of the sick pay. So underneath that federal FMLA provisions, there's a lot of unique situations with our associates, and helping to navigate those. I've made myself available 24/7 to employees, and I've gotten calls on Saturday and Sunday evenings just for associates having questions, and those are really good questions that we're getting. We're able to help them navigate some of those kind of unique situations that they have for their families or for themselves. So that is happening. As a support department for the entire county, we couldn't really stop the way in which we were supporting our associates and what their needs were. And from a day-to-day standpoint, we were already very HR technology savvy. Most of our request forms are online, so it was just really the follow-through piece for us, that one-on-one interaction that we don't always have. But the utilizing the increased technology has been instrumental for us to have that face-to-face contact, whether it's through a Zoom meeting or whether it's through Microsoft Teams. We're able to really have that touch point, more personal touch point with our associates. A couple things from HR office and how our business has been impacted. The HR team everybody except for myself has been working 4 days a week remotely, and then 1 day of the week in the office to support any of the HR functions. I recently assigned our HR generalist to be on a COVID-19 transition team to help all the other departments with transitioning to reopening to the public. That team is led by Gina Heyer. I think it was Kara who talked about Gina and some of the work that she's been doing to help support those efforts. And then just again, the use of Teams and what the IT team has been able to give that technology to all of us has been instrumental in really helping to continue that communication effort with our employees. From a training and development standpoint, we switched everything to virtual learning. We already have an e-learning system that we have utilized, but we also switched any face-to-face trainings that we had scheduled to virtual meetings. And just an example of that, we recently had our Insights training with Dr. Sikora from Sikora Consulting, and we were able to switch that very quickly to have 66 participants in that meeting through Microsoft Teams and a Zoom capability. And very positive feedback from our folks to do that. From a labor relations standpoint, we were impacted by some postponements of some mediations and other labor-related business that we were working with our union partners those mediations have since been rescheduled with our labor partners, but I'll just have to make a comment about our labor partners. We have some really incredible relationships with our union business agents as well as our stewards, and all have been very positive and supportive of all the efforts that our county has made to support our associates. We haven't had really any pushback from any of our labor groups to help support the COVID initiatives here for our county. From a staffing perspective, and something that we did talk through a little bit at our personnel committee, was that you know, as we have replacement staffing come up, we are having a very careful review of all those opening positions to ensure that, is this a position that we need to fill right now today, or can this be something that could be held off for a few months as we continue to replace staff? We have made the decision that we're not adding any new positions that are not aligned to the budget for the rest of 2020. So you won't see anything like that on personnel actions. Something that was, you know, hard for my team and for some of our Kearney partners was to cancel all of our job events. As a county, we try to represent numerous job events, whether it's at the college or whether it's at Bemidji State or whether it's at St. Cloud State, just to have the exposure and to hire and recruit some of the best talent out there. So we've switched and done everything virtually, and we're still maintaining a very strong applicant pool for all of our positions. An example of that is we have 4 deputy positions that we're making some final decisions on, and we were able to virtually do a lot of that applicant tracking, and we were able to recruit over 70 applicants for those positions, which is unheard of, but it also shows that people want to work here at the county, and we want to keep that brand presence going. So social media has been a real friend to all of us through this, and keeping that exposure is really important, as we are an employer of choice here in the county. And then I think one of the most impactful things that we have been able to really support the county with, and our associates and our managers with, is really the engagement piece with stress management. Stress management has been really difficult for some of our folks that have had to really change how they do their work. They're no longer have somebody to come in to see. They have to do it differently, and they have to work differently. Their family dynamics have changed, and we've provided numerous resources to help our folks through some of that stress management pieces as well. And I think that is my recap, unless you have additional questions for me.
Any questions for the Human Resources Director, Melanie Fontaine-Lasca?
Mr. Chair, if I can, from the HR type of position, how have we been able to manage the working off-site and being able to track productivity and our accomplishments?
Well, every department has, productivity standards, and through the technology that they have, whether it's, I'll just use Land Services. I don't know if Gary's still in the room, but Land Services utilizes for their recording staff. They have metrics that they're able to pull and know who's working on every single type of document that they're recording. And so they're able to set those expectation standards, and from a performance management standpoint, that's how we're all graded. And to be able to push the same type of standard through is happening throughout the county. And I know that Community Services does the same thing with our financial workers and how many cases that they are able to process. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Scott Goddard.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. An update from our office. I think it's easiest maybe just to start, kind of as you walk through the door. So one of the questions that we've had placed somewhat prevalent is reference to gun permit renewals, and we are accepting them. Our current processes only allow them on Mondays, so our office entryway, just like everyone else's on county campuses, is closed, but we do have a process in place Mondays from, I believe it's 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., where people can come in and drop off the renewals for the gun permits. Permits are something that, the carry permits are something that are unique to the county sheriff's offices, not the police departments. The police departments still, depending on their city structure, can handle the permits to purchase, but the permits to carry still all need to go through the sheriff's office, and we want to make sure we were able to maintain that, so we've got the processes in place for that. Moving through our office, we do have a number of staff, our support staff, that are working off-site, and Commissioner Brecken, kind of answering your question, is yes, you know, we've itemized out the tasks and the details that we can have them work on. And for the first time really in our past, our phones are not being answered by a person when someone calls. We actually went to the option system, and then they can certainly speak to an actual person, but we're now using an automated system to reduce that front person's task on that and move what their work assignments over to other areas. So it's something that we're working through. Moving downstairs, our Emergency Operations Center has been open now, oh gosh, since the middle of March, Monday through Friday, weekdays. And so we're going on week 7, approaching week 6, we're approaching week 7 with that right now. And as you know, our Emergency Management Director, John Bowen, has done an awesome job for all of us. And kudos to his work with public health and all of his partners really throughout the county of helping us to rewrite the book of where we're at today in comparison to where we were, back at the beginning of the year with none of this on our radar as ever going to be an issue. Our patrol staff, we have adjusted their schedules. We've looked at the rotation of 7 on, 7 off. And we modeled that over to the jail and used that same approach, 7 on, 7 off. The idea being that there'll be less possible transmission issues going from team to team. So if you are on your 7 days on, you'll be working with the same team members and the same jail staff across the board. So we don't have that cross-contamination issue if and when we have to, start to lose some people because of this illness, or they're out for a short time because of this illness. So your comment was made that our union partners have been great to work with. They have. We brought this to them and said, this is what we're looking at. Understand we're under unique conditions, and they were more than willing to, work with us and help address that. Dispatch, we've had that lockdown for basically since this was on our radar. As soon as the issues started to arise that, this is something that can knock people out for, an extended period from work, we went to a lockdown in dispatch. And we were also one of the first to implement, on both sides of our street, really, the jail and our law enforcement center, implement the process of testing everyone. So the self-checks, where they do their temperature scans and they're checking in each day. Just simple questions, are you sick? Do you feel sick? Do you have a fever? Anyone in your family sick? Just those check bases, check points that we can get through to make sure that we're being as proactive as possible. And then moving across the street to our jail, our numbers are down, which is great. We're below 90 for the first time in recent history, really. We're trying to keep those numbers down, and we've been working very well with our partners, with Don Ryan, our county attorney, and our courts, probation, really all of our partners, to try to keep those numbers down, but we're also seeing that there's a backlog starting. Probation officers are having a number of cases that they're doing what they can to keep them out of the system right now. We've got a number of warrants that we're turning away on a normal protocol that we would be bringing into our jail. So, once this process runs its course and we start to get back to our new normal, I can see our numbers tick up dramatically at a very quick basis. And our court systems are going to be busy too. Last, I would like to say kudos to all of our staff. They have done an awesome job of reaching out, coming forward, putting on a smiling face. And, our approach is different. We're not handling calls like we used to, and for the foreseeable future, we will not be handling calls how we used to. If things can be done by the phone, they're being done by the phone. There are cases where we have to have, person-to-person contact, and sometimes very close person-to-person contact. But whatever we can do to help avoid that, we are doing that, and that's the model that we're going to have really moving forward. With that, Mr. Chair, I would say that this is my number 7, but I would certainly entertain any questions that anybody does have.
Any questions for the sheriff? Sheriff, are you seeing a uptick or what, as far as crimes going on in the county? What does it look like? I watch the news a lot, and I see that in a lot of these jurisdictions, there's a lot of more, it seems like burglaries are on the rise, or what are you seeing?
You know, I would say overall, we've seen a dramatic drop in calls for service, which we expect. Our traffic numbers 3 weeks ago, actually, I was just talking about this yesterday, were dramatically lower on just the public perception of driving around and looking at where we were 3 weeks ago versus this last weekend. This last weekend was crazy. I heard reports that, some of our bigger stores were literally, the parking lots were full or getting the last spots on that. Burglaries, we do see an uptick this time of year, but oftentimes it's associated to those residences that have been snowed in and haven't been checked or haven't been accessible really since last fall. So we do see an uptick in that. The most concerning to us, and we see this not only across our area but really across the nation, is the domestic disturbance. So the situations involving violence at home, and there has been an uptick in that. We've noticed that, and I don't think it's going to stop. When you put people that are already in a violent or a toxic relationship and now ask them to spend more time together in a small environment, you can imagine that that's kind of just adding fuel to the fire in a lot of aspects. I've even heard some recent reports that even our partners with the Women's Shelter and our advocates, they're busier than they would like to be because of what we're facing today. So we are seeing, some areas of concern, but overall, people have been great. When I look at our calls for service, and normally we have, say 70 for a certain day, and we see maybe 30 or 35 or 40, that's a good sign that, our volume is going down, and people, maybe are also understanding that, is this something I really need to pass on? If it is, yes, please do so. But oftentimes, I think they're kind of second guessing themselves that, no, you know what, I can go talk to my neighbor myself, or call my neighbor myself, rather than have us be the go-between, which I think is nice.
One other question, I said this at a previous board meeting, that I feel like the longer this goes on, obviously, I don't think that this can continue to go on. This country can't sustain it. It'll be a Great Depression. And that being said, I think that the population will not accept this much longer. I said that at a previous board meeting. I think there's going to start being pushback. I perceive that now. Like you said, that when you see the parking lots full, like Fleet Farm was full. And I've heard that there's some pushback from some churches that said, we're going to start having church, and you have to do what you have to do. Are you seeing any pushback on that? Or?
I guess, Mr. Chair, I wouldn't categorize it as pushback. We've had, I've seen an uptick in questions coming directly to me from the churches, but also from businesses throughout. And I've got friends. I grew up here. You all know that. Yeah. I've got friends throughout this area that own businesses, and I feel for them. And I'm hopeful the governor's going to come out this week, hopefully within the next day or so, with some additional guidance of what he wants to do or how we're going to move forward. I've been a proponent for the last weeks here, plural, of we need a plan. We need to have a plan, a defined plan of how we're going to move forward.
Definitely.
But this impacted me personally. I think some of you might be aware. I had a family member that passed away due to COVID, and it is true. It is real. It is happening. So this impacts all of us, and I can truly see both sides of that argument, and it's hard for me to say, to have a commitment to how strongly I feel on one or the other, because, I hate to see my friends suffer, but I also know how this can affect, families, so.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Sheriff.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks.
County Attorney Donald Ryan.
Morning, everybody. Sorry I'm running late, but as with everyone else, I seem to have more meetings now than I had before we closed the building. So, overall, the impact in our office has been quite surreal, if you will. So this is what, my 26th year as county attorney, and I was a public defender in private practice long before that. Never before have I walked into the county courthouse on a Monday morning and it was as quiet as a tomb. And it's been that way for weeks now. The first couple of days, it was really weird. I really would just take a break and walk around the halls and just see that everything's closed and it's quiet when there usually are hundreds of people in there. So, but we've adjusted and changed the way we do stuff. We have only approximately half of our non-attorney staff in the office at any one time. We actually created a 2-week rotation so that there was consistency that way, so they could plan ahead. And the first week or so, we would have a week on, week off. That was too much, so then we changed it to a day on, day off. And it's the same 2-week rotation as it just continues through. And we're able to, and this was new for us because our non-attorney staff never worked from home before, with a few exceptions, like if they had to take care of a sick child and they could do a typing job or something. And so they are able to remote in and do all the work they need to do for that particular day, and anything that needs to be printed, because we still have paper files they can print. A different legal assistant puts it on their desk, and then the next day they come in and they get all their filing and they work just as normal in the office. They rotate back and forth that way. This year we've realigned our office and we've gone with more of a team prosecution concept unrelated to COVID than we had before. And so, for instance, we have 2 attorneys doing all the felony, gross misdemeanor, people type crimes. Ultimately, we'll have 2 legal assistants, but we have 1 there, 2 and 2 for the drug cases, 2 legal assistants and 1 attorney, soon to be 2 on the misdemeanors, and 1 and 1 on the adult, prosecution on the property cases for the felony and grosses. And then we have 3 attorneys and 2 legal assistants in the juvenile field. So we're able to split those teams so only half of them are in the office at a time, which allows us to keep our specialization going. The attorneys are on a little bit different schedule. For instance, I get up in the morning, I walk out to my garage, I get in the car, I drive to work. I park closer to the building than I used to because there's nobody else there. I walk in the door, I don't see anybody. I walk up the steps to my office, I walk in, I go in my office and I sit there. I basically have no personal interaction with anybody except if I go to the coffee pot maybe. So the attorneys are on more of a work remotely when you can, but if you want to be in the office, that's okay kind of program. Simply because we're all cloistered into our offices anyway, and it's easier for them to access everything they need to access from work. But at any given day, we'll have half of our attorneys working from home as well. Just different kind of job demands. I've only worked remotely 1 day with what I'm doing. I'm not very good on a computer. To think I'm going to figure out how to use a laptop just wasn't going to be something I was doing. So I have figured out how to do that. I've actually done virtual court now, as well as all my other attorneys. I've been on several Teams and Zoom meetings, and to think this old dog could learn new tricks like that is really quite amazing. In fact, at one of our senior management meetings, I actually popped up an emoji. Freaked everybody out. It was a good emoji, though. It was something I wanted to say positive to, so the clappy hands came up or something like that. So it's been learning some new technology. With the courts, we have very little in-person court appearances now. Most of it's just juvenile court. And that's just because, I don't know why, just because that's the way they're scheduling it. So we have some attorneys there. The adult court is all basically virtual. Very few of the judges, other than the juvenile calendar, come into the building anymore. They're all working from home virtually. We just had a meeting last Wednesday or Thursday about how we're going to reopen the courts, and that was done. We had all the judges, myself, and Candace from my office, and Carly Fahachuk, the managing public defender, and we're all virtual, sitting in our own offices. And it worked, okay. It's not like the real thing, but challenges of how are we going to do jury trials when we can't reconfigure our courtrooms, and yet we still have to social distance, and you have to have 14 jurors there plus everybody else. And so I met with maintenance yesterday, and we did some touring, and we're coming up with some ideas so I can report back to the bench. We've looked at things like, will we have virtual jury trials where we have the jury in one room, maybe our training room over in land services, and everybody else in the courtroom. IT has said that's, both state and county level has said that's probably not going to work, particularly when you're trying to have that video transmission and look at body language and stuff. So that's probably not what we're going to do. We'll look at more social distancing and limiting the number of people in the courtrooms. We're also exploring, could we use, say, the law library and the judicial center as a remote ITV location for clients or participants to appear virtually if they don't have that opportunity from their office. And depending upon if it's on the civil side of things or the criminal, and whether you have private sector, private hired attorneys, or it's the public defender's office, the opportunities to have access to that technology is different. And so we're trying to work through that to see what it looks like. The courts are looking at reopening, but on a staggered kind of plan. So, and of course, that all depends upon what happens this week. I don't know what the governor's going to say. I don't know what Chief Justice Gilday is going to issue if there's a new order. But right now, we're planning on next week, all current court, at least on the criminal side, that schedule is going to occur. And it's going to occur by in-person appearances in the courtroom for felonies and grosses. They're exploring possibly misdemeanor appearances by telephone. There's different legal requirements, whether a person has to show up and be seen by a judge or not. But they're going to stagger it to no more than 5 cases per hour per courtroom. And we might be running 3 simultaneous criminal courtrooms for the next couple of weeks, at least 3 days a week. And I've told the courts we can accommodate that for a period of time, particularly when we know how it's scheduled, but that's not something we're going to be able to do indefinitely going forward. And so there are more questions than answers right now on how we're going to do some of that. Even like with my staff, if the courts gear back up and they're more like functioning as normal, I'm not going to be able to keep half my people at home because we're going to just have too much demand that we're going to have hands-on doing in the office itself. We also are exploring, for instance, today, you probably didn't want to have 15 to 30 people standing on the sidewalk spaced 6 feet apart waiting their turn to get into the courthouse because it's raining. Or if this is still in November and it's snowing, same thing. Yesterday, standing on the sidewalk, people probably would have liked to hang out there rather than come into the courtroom. So where can we space people? How do we get them through the screening? And I want to echo what I'm sure everyone has said. I think the county staff has just done a phenomenal job, particularly Michelle and John, and Rachel and the other John. So we're going to probably be putting duct tape 6 feet on the, in the hallways to help people stay spread out. We're spreading out the benches that are in the hallways for people to sit on, so there's only one between each of the pillars. They're only going to be on one side of the aisle so that the attorneys can stand 6 feet apart on the other side to have their conversation and then speak with their clients. Just different things like that. In the courtrooms, we're looking at plexiglass separation options between the witness and the court reporter, and then between the deputy court administrator and the law clerk, who literally are sitting 12 inches apart in there. With that plexiglass, there's more of a safety concept. And the courts are working through their virtual aspects as well. So it's when you're trying to get corrections, the state court system, our office, and then everyone else that's coming in and out of that building, it's going to be challenging to say the least, but no less or more challenging than what everybody else is facing. As we're going forward, there's some good news coming out of this, which is really hard for me to say, but it is. We get all of our criminal investigative data electronically, and we store it on a designated hard drive. And when we're done with a case and the appellate term is expired, we're supposed to go back in and delete that off the hard drive. Law enforcement still has it, but that's just our little shared hard drive. Well, as you can imagine, at the pace we're functioning, we don't always get that done right away. That thing's empty now, except for the new stuff coming in. Some of the other backed up databases, Jay was just talking to me this last week, and I couldn't even find the stuff he said he wanted us to delete. Well, it was in WordPerfect. We don't even have WordPerfect on our computer anymore, so he had to show me the special way to go in and find the stuff. Most of that's deleted now. Our backlog and our charging decisions, a lot of my attorneys actually are caught up, so they don't have any pending charging decisions. So there's a little bit of a silver lining. The other side of that, now we literally have more than 100 felonies pending there in the court's queues that need to be brought into court for the first time and through all this paperwork. So we've already issued ex parte orders. The courts have signed for sentencing worksheets. When we know there's a public defender appointed on a companion case, we've contacted the public defender's office so they could request appointment. Or if we know they're going to get appointed anyway, I've authorized expedition of getting the discovery to them, so maybe we can resolve all the cases quicker than waiting for the 2 or 3 court appearances. We're looking, how can we resolve probation violations by petition if there's an agreement and someone's not going back to jail, but say they're going to be reinstated on same terms and conditions with an updated chemical use assessment. The courts have said they would consider that, so we can just file the paperwork, court orders it, nobody has to come into the building, but we can still do what we need to do. So a lot of creativity has come out of this, and I credit my staff for coming up with it, because they're making me look good, because they're the ones doing the work. I could keep going, but I'm the end of the line here, so you probably heard enough. But I answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for the county attorney? Don, just a couple of questions. So jury trials, you're talking about the jurors. How many, in the past, what would you say the average of, how many jury trials how many times do we need a jury? Or how many jury trials are there?
We actually have jury trials scheduled 2 out of every 4 weeks.
How many?
We have felony jury trials scheduled 2 out of every 4 weeks. And so basically what happens is that we have a 2-week block. Once you get through the process where it's set on for trial, and then all of those jury trials are put in order, and so then they're scheduled accordingly. That doesn't mean we actually have trials every 2 out of every 4 weeks. A lot of times all the cases will settle. But I would say we, at least half of our jury calendars, we actually have jury trials in Crow Wing County. So I don't have a number, Paul, I don't want to guess, but if you've got, what, 12 months, you'd have 24 weeks of jury trials potentially. I'd say we use up at least 12 to 16 of those with trials, just as a rough guess.
That go to trial?
Actually go to trial.
Where they're sitting there? Okay.
Yep. And then there's a difference between the felonies and the misdemeanors. Misdemeanors are 6 people. We can accommodate that pretty easy, as opposed to 7 if you have an alternate, but most of the time those cases don't take that long. 14 is another number when you have to all of a sudden accommodate that social distancing piece, so.
And then you said special, I don't know if you said special projects or you said something special, and it kind of brought up a question in my head, but I can't remember what you said. You said your staff is working on, do you remember that, or? If you
In
can't
my
think of it.
office, when I walk up to a person and say, I have a special project for you, they normally cringe really bad.
Okay, well, it wasn't special project, it was something else special.
No, we do have special projects. So for instance, one of the things that we've been wanting to do as non-attorney staff assignments have changed is we've wanted to update our procedure manuals. And so that's something that is relatively easy to do for those that are working from home, and it's something that kept getting put off for a rainy day. So those are really more detailed, they've been updated. I think maybe what you're thinking of was when I said there was some good that came out of it, and so getting all of the backlog of the technology stuff that could be deleted, that saves the county money. It saves us time, it makes us more efficient with the technology that we have. It's just things, and everyone, all of you, me, everyone that's listening, we all have things we want to get to. You call them special projects, whatever, that we just don't get to with the pace of life, whether that be our job or whatever. As things have slowed down for us a little bit, not for me so much, because I'm spending way more time on the computers and meetings than I ever have, but we've been able to catch up on some of that. And I've also told my people, if you have a little time to take a breath, take it, because when we reopen the courts and we start going forward, it's going to hit really hard. And we're going to be busier than we ever were for some period of time when we have to catch up, plus keep our current caseloads.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
No, okay. Well, I just want to say that this was helpful to have all the senior leadership team come forward and give an update on the COVID-19 for the county board's benefit and for the public's benefit. I think this was helpful, so I appreciate that very much. Next, County Administrator.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. You've been at it for a while now. I have some sad news, and then I have some good news immediately behind that. I regret that I have to be the one to let you know that today the Minnesota Department of Health will announce the first confirmed official death in Crow Wing County due to COVID-19. What we know is it is a resident, a male in his 70s. And so obviously this is sort of, this is a milestone that I wish we would never have gotten to, but this is where we find ourselves today. And so that's the bad news. The good news, to switch gears a bit, our local fire departments over this past weekend held an effort to collect donations of masks from throughout the county. And what I know from at least two of the fire departments already is that they collected between 2,000 and 2,500 masks. They're going to use them for nursing home residents as well as staff, and also for daycare providers. And so that's good news. I'm going to keep my updates brief because I think you got most of what I would have otherwise updated you on. Just to let you know, in the historic courthouse, our plans for reopening are underway as well. We're going to try to limit no more than 10 in the building at a time from the members of the general public. We do have the separation, sneeze guards, glass, whatever you want to call it, on order for the administration, extension, finance, and elections counter. That's not scheduled to be here until the week of May 11th. As you can imagine, there's a bit of a back order on that kind of equipment around the community right now. And so we will use portable plexiglass separators like HR has on a temporary basis. We are currently planning to unlock the east door to allow traffic in so that we can monitor the number of people that we're letting in at any given point in time. The exit obviously could be through any door. We are also putting plastic disposable baggies at each of the self-fueling pumps on our campus and at the highway shop. So those of our staff that are using our fuel pumps can have, essentially it's like a glove, plastic bag that's disposable. I wanted to focus a little bit more of your attention on the Federal CARES Act. This is funding that the state of Minnesota just recently received, and it is to help offset some of the costs that are being incurred. Hennepin County got $221 million because they exceed a population threshold, and so they qualify for a direct federal allocation. Ramsey County received $96 million. To put that into some perspective, for Hennepin County, that's $175 per capita. And so it's a fairly significant reimbursement. Right now, if the legislature does not act to allocate any of the remaining funds to counties or cities, then the rest of us will get nothing. The state of Minnesota, of course, has costs associated with their COVID response. And so I bring this to your attention because when you have a chance to be talking to our state legislators, I would ask you to point out, as you well know, we have incurred costs. And those costs would be eligible for reimbursement. There is $667 million left for all of the state of Minnesota after the Ramsey and Hennepin allocations. Up to 45% of that can be allocated to local units of government, but the state's not obligated to allocate any of it to local units of government. When I've had conversations with our MICA delegation, I think the most common way of trying to divide any money that they would send to us would be on a per capita basis. And I've made the case that for those of us who are in the tourism parts of the state, a per capita basis does not accurately reflect the nature of how this has impacted us. Our impacts are significant on the economic side. I saw something from the Minnesota Department of Labor not that long ago that said the new unemployment claims in Crow Wing County exceeds 20% of our 2019 workforce. Now, we normally have probably 3 to 5% unemployment in good times, so that's approaching 25% of our workforce. And so I've made the case as strongly as I can that it should be 50% per capita, 50% based on unemployment claims. Unemployment has not been evenly divided in this COVID situation, and we are suffering more from unemployment right now. And so I'm making that case. I wanted to bring that to your attention so that if you have conversations, you can as well. And then just one final note of normality, held a dangerous dog hearing. You know that if somebody's dog gets itself in trouble with the law, they can get a dangerous dog declaration. And if somebody wants to appeal that declaration, I'm the hearing officer for that. We did that entirely virtual. And so it's kind of odd. You have the owner of the alleged dog offender sitting at a gas station between Minot, North Dakota, and Fargo. You had the victim's dog owner sitting at their home. You got the sheriff's deputy sitting in their squad car. Me, the county attorney's office, sitting in their office. And so it was just kind of strange. This is where we're at nowadays, is that we do things in very creative and remote ways. So we completed it on time, did it the way we needed to do it. So happy to answer any questions about that or anything else related to county government.
Any questions for the county administrator? County administrator, so I know that we're doing a good job of keeping track of, I think is a good thing, that we're trying to keep track of how much we're spending on COVID-related things, the sneeze guards, whatever have you. I thought I saw an email the other day that we were like at 700,000. Can you just give us an update on that? 600,000 or 700,000?
Total COVID expenses and lost revenues that we know of totaled $701,035.91 so far, and that was as of last week. Total available revenues, now this is going to include the capital projects freeze amount, is $1,148,882. And so between the grants that we've received and the spending that we froze, we are still okay with how that will impact on the 2020 budget. It remains to be seen how that's going to pan out. I think our expenses are going to start to slow down in, I hope, significant ways. And if we can get some of that CARES Act funding, that would be an offset, or any other grants that we can apply for would also be an offset. So that's where I kind of see it today, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any questions from the county board? No, doesn't look like it. Thank you for that report. Any additional business to come before the county board? No additional business. Motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner Franzine,
I'll second.
seconded by Commissioner Brecken to adjourn. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Here's what I wanted you